They left a German Shepherd puppy to freeze outside Livingston, Montana. It was the middle of the day, bright sun on the snow, so everything looked harsh and empty. I was driving back toward town when I spotted him standing right on the shoulder of the road like he belonged there. He wasn't chasing cars, wasn't moving at all, just standing still, steam coming out of his mouth in the cold, staring down the highway like he was waiting for someone. I tapped the brakes and pulled over, and the snow kicked up around him. He didn't even flinch. I'm Ryan Caldwell. I'm 44, and I've seen plenty of strange things out here, but I knew right away this wasn't right. I cracked the door, felt the air hit me sharp in the face, and called out softly, "Hey, buddy." He looked at me for a second, then turned his head toward the trees beside the road, almost like he was pointing me somewhere. At first, I thought maybe he just wanted to run, but then I heard it. A bark, thin, broken, and desperate. Then another sound, a whine that sank straight into my chest. I crossed the ditch, crunching through the snow, and that's when I saw him. Another German Shepherd puppy about the same age, tied to a small pine with a blue nylon rope. He was tangled, half buried in snow, shivering so hard his whole body shook. The rope dug into the bark like it had been there too long. The one at the road stayed planted like a lookout. He paced 3 steps and stopped, staring back toward me and his brother. The tied one pressed forward, paws slipping, then dropped again into the drift, his eyes locked on mine, pleading without a sound. I crouched down and tried to slide my glove under the rope. The knot was frozen solid, stiff like stone. My fingers burned from the cold, and the puppy pushed his head against my boot, desperate just to be touched. Out by the highway, another semi roared past, shaking the ground. The first pup stood broad and steady against the wind, his breath fogging in the sun, like he was daring the world not to ignore them any longer. I dug at the ice-hard knot, leather creaking, my breath ragged in the cold, and the little guy's chest heaved against my hand. I could feel his warmth fading fast, and still the rope wouldn't give. The rope was frozen so tight it felt welded to the tree. My gloves slipped against the nylon, and for a second I thought I wasn't going to get him free. The puppy whimpered low in his throat, leaning harder into me like he was begging me not to stop. My stomach knotted. Whoever left them here had done it on purpose. They wanted him stuck. I yanked off a glove and jammed my bare fingers into the ice, feeling the burn of the cold. My nails caught the edge of the knot, and slowly I started to work it loose. The pup's breath came in hot bursts against my skin, sharp and frantic. Every few seconds he'd lick at my hand, more like he was trying to hold on to me than anything else. Out on the road, the other German Shepherd puppy barked once, short and urgent, like he was pushing me to hurry. Finally, the knot snapped loose and the rope slackened. The little guy stumbled forward so fast he nearly toppled me. I wrapped an arm around him, feeling how light he was under all that thick fur. His ribs shifted against my chest. He didn't resist, didn't fight, just pressed in like he'd been waiting for this moment. The lookout pup bolted in, circling us, his paws cutting into the snow, barking over and over like he had to make sure I understood how serious this was. When I looked up at him, I realized he wasn't celebrating. He kept turning his head down the road toward the horizon, then back to me. I carried the freed pup toward the truck, and the other ran ahead, stopping, looking back, then running again. He wasn't finished. He wasn't ready to leave this place yet. It felt like he was trying to tell me something, that their story wasn't just about being abandoned, but about why they were still here at all. I set the freed pup down by the truck, but he wouldn't climb in. He leaned against my leg, shaking, while the other one barked again from the road. His paws dug into the snow, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the distance. He didn't want to leave. I followed his gaze down that endless stretch of highway. Nothing but white fields and the thin black ribbon of asphalt cutting through them. He sat there in the snow like a soldier on watch, refusing to break position. Every car that passed, he lifted his head a little, like maybe this time it would be the one who left him. My throat tightened. I'd seen loyal dogs before, but never like this. The one I'd freed pawed at my boot, as if to say, "Help him. Don't just take me." His fur was wet and clumped, the smell of rope and pine still on him. I opened the truck door, but he resisted, claws scraping the step. He didn't want to climb in without his brother, The loyalty between them was iron. I walked back toward the road pup, crunching through the frozen crust. "Come on, buddy," I called, keeping my voice low. Careful. He didn't move. He just stood tall, breath streaming in clouds, eyes locked on the horizon like he was carved from the snow itself. His ears twitched at my voice, but his paws stayed planted. I was close enough to see the frost on his whiskers when he finally turned his head and looked at me. It wasn't fear I saw there. It was a question, one that burned through my chest. Could he trust me enough to leave this spot, the spot where he last saw the people who abandoned him? The wind whipped hard down the road, rattling the branches. And in that moment I realized if I didn't find a way to earn his trust right now, he would stay here until the cold took him. I crouched low in the snow, holding out both hands so he could see I wasn't a threat. My breath stung my throat, and my fingers ached from the cold. But I stayed still. The German Shepherd puppy stared at me, chest rising and falling quick and shallow, like every part of him was fighting between staying and running. Behind me, his brother whimpered, one paw half raised, waiting. The sound broke through the wind, and I watched the road pup's ears flick back. He shifted his weight just slightly like he was being pulled in two directions. His loyalty to the spot where he'd been left, and his bond with the brother who was already free. I spoke softly, words fumbling out before I even thought them through. "Nobody's coming back for you. Not from that road, but I am right here." My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. But maybe that's what he needed to hear, because for the first time he blinked, lowered his head, and let out a long, tired sigh. Step by step, I inched closer until my knees were wet through, and the cold bit hard into my skin. He didn't back away. When I reached out, his nose touched my palm quick and sharp, then pulled back as if testing me. I stayed still. He tried again, pressing harder this time, leaving a smear of frost and spit across my glove. The other pup barked once sharp, and that seemed to break the spell. The road pup's legs gave a tiny shake. Then he moved slowly, carefully toward me. By the time his shoulder brushed against my arm, I could feel how tense he was. Every muscle wound tight like a spring. I slid one arm around him gently, not forcing it. For a heartbeat, he stiffened, ready to bolt. Then all at once, the tension dropped out of him. He sagged against me, his weight solid, his breath hot against my collar. Out on the highway, another truck roared by, spraying up snow. But this time, he didn't look at it. He leaned into me instead, and I knew if I could get him into the truck, I'd have both of them safe. Only problem was, he still refused to move toward it. I tried to guide him toward the truck, but the German Shepherd puppy planted his paws like anchors in the snow. Every step I took, he resisted, twisting his head back to stare down that endless highway. It was like an invisible chain that still tied him to the spot where he'd been abandoned. His brother wed from beside the open door, ears perked, tail low, waiting. He barked twice, short and pleading, as if telling him, "Come on, it's safe." But the road pup wasn't ready. He pulled against my grip, not to run away from me, but to go right back to the shoulder of the road. I let go for a second, watching him trot back and sit down in the exact same place, body tall against the wind. His breath steamed, his fur dusted white with powder, and those eyes never left the stretch of blacktop. Cars blew past one after another, drivers barely glancing at what they thought was just another stray. My chest ached. I knew what this was. Hope. He was still waiting for the ones who left him here, waiting in the only place he believed they might return. I knelt in the snow again, my jeans soaked through, and whispered, "They're not coming back, buddy, but I won't leave you here." My voice caught, the words heavier than I wanted them to be. He flicked an ear, but his gaze stayed locked on the horizon. The freed pup walked up beside me, pressing against my knee, and then he did something I didn't expect. He barked at his brother, sharp and insistent, then nudged his nose into my hand. It was as if he was choosing right then to trust me. The road pup's ears twitched again, and slowly, carefully, he turned his head toward us. He stood, shook the snow from his coat, and took one hesitant step in our direction. It wasn't much, but it was the first sign he might be willing to follow me away from that road. That single step felt like the ground shifting. The German Shepherd puppy looked back once more at the highway, ears pinned against the wind, then lowered his head and padded toward us. His paws sank deep in the snow, each movement heavy, reluctant, but he was moving. I didn't reach for him right away. I just stayed where I was, letting his brother keep close at my side. The freed pup wagged his tail tentatively, nudging his nose into my hand again as if to show, "See, it's safe here." The road pup finally closed the distance, his chest brushing against my knee, and I felt the tremor running through him like a current. I slid my arm around his shoulders, slow and careful. This time he didn't resist. His weight leaned into me, not all at once, but enough to tell me he was done standing guard out there alone. I whispered, "That's it, boy. You don't have to wait anymore." My breath fogged in front of us, mixing with theirs. 3 clouds in the cold Montana air. The walk back to the truck was clumsy, the snow sucking at our boots and paws. The freed pup darted ahead, then back, circling, making sure his brother was coming. The road pup glanced over his shoulder more than once, but each time he turned back quicker, like he was finally letting go. At the truck, I opened the door wide. The freed pup jumped inside, curling instantly on the seat like he'd been there all his life. The road pup froze at the step. He sniffed the edge, ears twitching at the smell of gasoline and leather, eyes uncertain. My heart thumped. I thought he might bolt right back to the road. I knelt beside him, resting my hand on the seat. "Together," I said quietly, nodding toward his brother. The pup inside gave a short bark, tail thumping against the upholstery. The road pup's ears flicked, his head tilted, and for a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he climbed in, slow but steady, and sank down beside his brother. Their bodies pressed so close it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. I shut the door gently, and for the first time that day, I let myself breathe. But deep down, I knew. The hardest part of their story hadn't even started yet. The cab filled with the smell of wet fur and cold air. Both German Shepherd puppies pressed so tightly together on the seat that they looked like one shadow with 2 sets of eyes. I turned the key and the old truck coughed awake, heater fan groaning, blowing weak, warm air across the windshield. At first, neither of them moved. The freed pup had his head buried under his brother's chin, tail tucked tight. The road pup sat upright, stiff as a board, eyes locked on the frosted glass like he was still guarding that stretch of highway. Every rumble of the engine made him flinch. I pulled onto the road slow, tires crunching through packed snow. The town was 15 miles ahead, but the drive felt longer. I kept glancing sideways, catching glimpses of their reflection in the cracked side mirror. 2 sets of ears, 2 silhouettes leaning into each other like the only thing they trusted in the world was the other's warmth. A mile in, the road pup started to pant. Not from heat, there wasn't any yet, but from nerves. He shifted, pressed closer, and then I felt it, the soft weight of his paw resting against my thigh. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He left it there for almost a full minute before pulling it back as if embarrassed. The freed pup raised his head, licking at his brother's muzzle, a quick, reassuring gesture. It worked. Slowly, the stiff one lowered his head, too, letting it rest on the seat, eyes half closed for the first time since I'd found him. I exhaled and gripped the wheel tighter. They were safe for the moment, but I knew cold and fear leave scars you can't always see. Getting them into the truck wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. And somewhere inside me, I braced for what it would take to keep them from breaking all over again. By the time the first gas station lights shimmered through the frost, I realized I had no plan beyond this drive. I only knew I couldn't let them down now. I pulled into the edge of town, the gas station lot shimmering with slush and salt. Neon lights buzzing against the pale Montana sky. The truck heater had finally started blowing warm air, and both German Shepherd puppies had loosened a little, their bodies no longer trembling so hard. Still, they stuck close together, shoulder to shoulder, as if the space between them couldn't exist. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, hands tight on the wheel. My mind ran through options, shelter, vet, food, but mostly I just stared at them. The freed pup's eyes followed every move I made, alert, hopeful. The road pup, though, kept glancing at the door as if stepping out meant risking being left again. I slid out of the cab and opened the passenger side. The smell of cold fur hit me fresh. "Come on," I said softly, patting the seat. The freed pup jumped down first, landing with a splash in the slush. His tail wagged tentatively, eyes glued to me. The road pup stayed put, ears back, body stiff. His paws dug into the seat cushion like nails. I didn't force him. I just crouched, letting him watch. The freed pup circled us both, yep-see, then pressed against his brother, nudging him toward me. After a long pause, the road pup crept forward, front paws hitting the wet ground. Then his back legs slid after. He landed hard, bracing himself like he expected the world to vanish beneath him. Inside the convenience store, people stared when I walked in with two soaked, shivering puppies. A kid tugged at his mom's sleeve and whispered, "Look, German Shepherd puppies." I grabbed a couple of heavy blankets from a display and a pack of dog food. The clerk didn't ask questions, just rang me up with wide eyes. Back at the truck, I spread one blanket across the seat and rubbed them dry with the other, working the damp out of their coats. The freed pup licked my wrist, his tongue warm against my skin. The road pup resisted at first, but then leaned into the blanket, sighing deep like the fight was leaving him. For the first time since I'd found them, both of them closed their eyes, pressed against each other in that small, warm cab. And I realized this wasn't just about saving them from the cold. It was about showing them a world where they could finally feel safe. By the time I pulled into the small animal shelter on the edge of Livingston, the German Shepherd puppies were breathing in rhythm, their heads resting against each other, finally asleep. I hated waking them, but I knew they needed more than my truck and a couple of blankets. The shelter lot was quiet, snow piled high against the chain-link fence. I carried the lighter one first, the freed pup, wrapped tight in the blanket. He didn't fight, just tucked his head against my chest, his warmth seeping through my jacket. The road pup stayed in the truck, eyes following every step, ears twitching with unease. Inside, the receptionist gasped when she saw the puppy in my arms. "Oh, poor thing," she whispered, already reaching for her phone to call a tech. I explained quickly where I'd found them, one tied to a tree, one waiting at the road, and watched her face pale. She shook her head in disbelief, but hurried us into an exam room. When I went back for the road pup, he refused to budge. His paws scraped against the seat, nails catching in the blanket. I coaxed, I pleaded, but he wouldn't come. His eyes locked on mine, wide and terrified, and I felt that sting in my chest again. He thought I was going to leave him behind, just like before. I climbed into the cab and sat beside him, not touching, just waiting. After a long minute, his brother barked from inside the building, a short, muffled sound through the walls. The road pup's ears shot up. He leaned forward, whined, then pressed his nose into my arm. That was enough. I lifted him heavy and stiff and carried him in. The moment he saw his brother waiting on the exam table, he came alive, tail thumping, paws scrambling, body twisting to get down. I set him beside his twin and watched them nose each other, pressing so close you'd think they were one dog split in two. The vet stepped in, laying hands gently on their backs, murmuring to them as she checked their ears, paws, bellies. "Malnourished but strong," she said. "Frauded in pads, but they'll heal." She smiled at me, eyes kind but serious. "These two, they've been through hell together. We'll keep them side by side." I nodded, throat tight, as the pups leaned into each other, eyes half closed. For the first time, I felt like they were finally somewhere they wouldn't be ignored. The next morning, I walked back into the shelter, the smell of disinfectant and the sound of barking echoing off the walls. I asked about the German Shepherd puppies, and the tech led me down a narrow hallway. My chest tightened with every step. When we reached their kennel, I stopped cold. The two of them were pressed against the bars, standing shoulder to shoulder like guards on duty. The freed pup wagged his tail hard, yipping when he saw me. But the road pup just stared, eyes burning with the same stubborn loyalty I'd seen on the highway. I crouched by the gate, slipping my fingers through the bars. Instantly, both of them shoved against my hand, licking, whining, desperate for contact. The road pup even let out a bark, sharp and insistent, like he was demanding to know if I'd really come back. I swallowed hard because I understood what he was asking. Am I safe now, or am I still waiting? The staff told me they'd been fed, warmed, and treated. "They'll be fine physically," the vet said, "but it's the trust that takes longer." I could see it already. Every time a door opened down the hall, the road pup stiffened. Every time someone walked by, he stared, half expecting to be abandoned all over again. I sat there longer than I should have, just talking to them, telling them about my truck, about the blankets, about how I'd driven through snowstorms before, but nothing ever hit me like finding them. My voice wavered more than once, and both pups pressed harder against the gate, like they could feel it. When I finally stood, the freed pup whimpered, pawing at the bars. The road pup didn't make a sound. He just locked his eyes on me, steady and unblinking, the same way he'd stared down that endless stretch of highway. And that look told me the truth. Saving them from the cold wasn't enough. If I walked away now, I'd be no different from the ones who left them out there. I signed the papers with my hands shaking, not from the cold this time, but from the weight of the choice. The shelter staff smiled, relieved, and slid the clipboard back. "They'll go home together," the woman asked. I nodded without hesitation. Always together. When they brought the German Shepherd puppies out, the room changed. The freed pup bounded toward me first, tail slapping my legs, joy spilling out of him in every movement. The road pup hung back at the doorway, Suloff, eyes locked on me like he was testing whether this was real. I crouched low, held out both arms and waited. It felt like forever, but finally he moved. Slow steps, ears twitching, tail low. He pressed his nose into my chest, trembling. Then all at once the stiffness broke and he collapsed against me, burying his face into my jacket. His brother barked once, tail wagging so hard it shook his whole body, and the two of them piled into my lap until I could hardly breathe. We drove out of Livingston together, the heater blasting, the truck smelling of wet fur and new beginnings. The freed pup curled in the passenger seat, head heavy on my thigh. The road pup sat upright at first, watching the highway flash by, then slowly leaned over until his head rested against his brother's. The mountains rose in the distance, bright with snow, and the road stretched long and open ahead. For the first time since I'd found them, both puppies looked forward, not back. Their eyes were calm, their breathing steady. As the sun dropped behind the peaks, I realized the weight in my chest was gone. They weren't abandoned anymore. They were home. Wherever I was, wherever we were going, they were finally home. I look back now at those two German Shepherd puppies and realize they taught me more in a few days than I'd learned in a lifetime. They had every reason to give up. Left on the side of a highway in the dead of winter, one tied to a tree, the other refusing to leave him behind. But even in that kind of cruelty, they held on. They held on to each other, to loyalty, to hope. And when I stopped on that snowy road outside Livingston, Montana, they gave me a chance to hold on to them. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Without shelters, without volunteers, without people willing to pause their day and step in, too many animals would never get that second chance. I've seen firsthand how close the line is between survival and loss. One frozen knot, one passing car, one person willing to stop. That's all that separated life from tragedy. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. It's showing up every single day, not just when it's convenient. These two brothers reminded me that animals don't ask for much, just warmth, safety, and someone they can finally trust not to walk away. And when they find that, the way they give back is limitless. Every tail wag, every lick on the hand, every look in their eyes says, "You saved me, but I'll spend my life saving you too." If you're watching this, I want you to carry something with you. Compassion is contagious. Sharing these stories isn't just about views or clicks. It's about saving the next life, about making sure the next puppy left in the cold isn't left unseen. When you share, when you comment, when you tell others, you're not just spreading a video, you're spreading a chance for another rescue, another happy ending. Both pups sleep soundly now, safe under my roof. Their bodies pressed together the way they were that first night in the truck. Only now when they dream, it's not of the road or the cold. It's of home. And that's something every dog deserves. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. Your support helps us save more animals. Don't forget to